The rain had been falling since morning, the kind that turned streets into mirrors and hope into something fragile. Amina stood under the thin metal shade outside the small grocery shop, her two children pressed close to her sides. The boy, Sami, held her toot'ta tightly. The little girl, Noor, leaned against her leg, her eyes heavy but alert in that way hungry children are, too tired to move, too empty to rest. Inside the shop, warm light spilled onto sacks of rice and stacked crates of vegetables. The smell of fresh bread drifted out every time someone pushed the glass door open. Amina swallowed hard. She had counted the coins in her hand 3 times already. They were not enough, not even close. "Ammi," Sami whispered, staring at a man walking out with a bag full of groceries. "Can we buy milk today?" Amina forced a smile the kind mothers learn to wear like armor. "We'll eat tomorrow," she said softly. "Today we just need to be patient." The words tasted bitter. Tomorrow had become her favorite lie. Her husband had died 8 months earlier in a factory accident. Compensation had been promised, paperwork had been filed, but nothing had arrived. She had stitched clothes for neighbors, washed dishes in homes that smelled of spices and comfort, and skipped meals so her children could eat. But this week had been worse. No work, no money, no mercy from the landlord. Noor tugged at her hand. "Ammi, my stomach hurts." Amina knelt and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Sleep a little when we get home. It will stop hurting." She didn't know how to explain that hunger doesn't sleep. The door of the shop opened again. This time, a tall man in his early 30s stepped out, holding a paper bag. He paused when he saw the 3 of them standing there, soaked at the edges from the rain. His eyes lingered on the children, then on Amina's trembling fingers clutching a few coins. He had seen that look before. His name was Hamza. He owned a small auto repair shop 2 streets away. Life had not been gentle with him either. Years ago, he had known what it meant to count coins, to pretend he wasn't hungry so his younger sister could eat. He remembered his mother's voice telling him, "Tomorrow will be better." Sometimes it was. Sometimes it was. He walked toward them slowly. "Sister, are you waiting for someone?" Amina straightened, embarrassment flushing her cheeks. "No, we were just leaving." She took a step back, but Sami's eyes were still fixed on the bread in Hamza's hand. Hamza looked at the coins in her palm. "Did you need something from the shop?" Amina shook her head quickly. Pride was a stubborn thing. "It's fine, we'll eat tomorrow." Hamza's heart tightened at those words. He crouched down to Sami's level. "What's your name?" "Sami," the boy answered shyly. "And yours?" he asked Noor. "Noor." Hamza smiled gently. "Those are beautiful names." He stood up and looked at Amina. "Please wait here a moment." Before she could protest, he turned and walked back into the shop. Amina's first instinct was to leave. She hated the way her situation felt exposed under his kind gaze. But her children's eyes followed the door, wide with fragile hope, and she couldn't bring herself to pull them away. Minutes later, Hamza came out carrying 2 large bags. He walked straight to them and placed the bags carefully at Amina's feet. Bread, rice, lentils, milk, eggs, even a small packet of biscuits. Amina stared at the food as if it were a mirage. "You don't have to," she began. He gently interrupted her. "Eat today." His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Please eat today." Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. "I can't repay you." Hamza shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." Sami reached for the bag hesitantly, as if afraid it might disappear. Noor clapped softly when she saw the biscuits. Amina's lips trembled. "May Allah bless you," she said. Hamza gave a small nod. "Just promise me something." She looked up. "When things get better and they will help someone else, that's enough." Amina held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. It was the only promise she could make with certainty. That night, for the first time in days, her children ate until they were full. Sami fell asleep with crumbs on his cheek. Noor curled up with a satisfied sigh. Amina sat beside them in the dim light, tears sliding silently down her face, not from despair this time, but from relief. And somewhere across town, Hamza lay awake, thinking of his own mother's voice and wondering if perhaps tomorrow had finally arrived for someone. The next morning, Amina woke before sunrise. She prepared tea and bread for her children, watching them eat with the quiet joy only a parent understands. The bags Hamza had brought were neatly arranged in the corner of their small one-room home. They were more than food. They were breathing space. Later that day, she gathered her courage and walked to the auto repair shop 2 streets away. She had asked the shopkeeper where she could find the man who had helped her. The workshop smelled of oil and metal. Cars stood half open like wounded creatures waiting to be healed. Hamza was bent over an engine when he noticed her shadow at the entrance. He wiped his hands on a cloth and approached. "Is everything okay?" Amina nodded. "I just wanted to say thank you again." He smiled faintly. "You already did." She hesitated. "I can sew. If you ever need uniforms repaired or anything stitched, I can help. I don't want charity, I want work." Hamza studied her for a moment. There was no begging in her eyes, only dignity. "As a matter of fact," he said slowly, "my mechanics' uniforms are always tearing at the seams, and my sister's children need school clothes stitched." Amina's face brightened for the first time in months. "I can do that." "Then it's settled," Hamza said. "I'll bring them by this evening." What began as a simple act of kindness slowly turned into something steadier. Hamza spread the word among his customers about a skilled seamstress nearby. Orders trickled in at first, then grew. Amina worked late into the night, her fingers moving with determination. Every stitch felt like reclaiming control over her life. Weeks passed. The landlord, who had once threatened eviction, softened when rent was paid on time. Sami returned to school with polished shoes. Noor's cheeks grew rounder. One afternoon, as Amina walked home from delivering finished clothes, she noticed an elderly woman sitting on the curb near the market. The woman's hands trembled as she held out a small bowl. People walked past without seeing her. Amina stopped. For a moment old fear whispered in her ear, "You barely have enough. Don't risk it." But then she remembered the rain, the grocery shop, the whisper, "Eat today." She stepped into a nearby stall and bought a packet of bread and some fruit. She knelt beside the elderly woman and placed the food gently in her hands. "Eat today," Amina said softly. The woman looked up, eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. As Amina walked away, she felt something shift inside her. The circle had begun. Months turned into a year. Hamza's repair shop flourished, and Amina's sewing business became known in the neighborhood. They remained connected not by obligation but by shared understanding. He would sometimes stop by to drop off fabric. She would send over neatly mended uniforms. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, Hamza visited with a small box of sweets. "For Sami," he said, handing it over. They sat outside on simple plastic chairs, while the children played nearby. "I've been thinking," Hamza began carefully, "life doesn't have to be survived alone." Amina looked at him, her heart beating faster. She had sensed the unspoken tenderness growing between them, not rushed, not forced, but patient. "I don't want to replace anyone," he continued, "but if you would consider, perhaps we could build something together." Silence hung between them, filled not with fear but possibility. Amina thought of the dark nights, of whispered lies about tomorrow, of empty plates. She thought of a man who had placed food before her children and asked for nothing in return. "You helped us stand again," she said quietly. "No," Hamza replied. "You stood, I just held out a hand." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but this time they carried no shame. "Yes," she said. It wasn't a grand proposal. There were no rings hidden in desserts, no dramatic declarations. Just two people who understood hunger in all its forms and chose to feed hope instead. Their wedding was small, held in the same neighborhood that had once watched Amina struggle. The shopkeeper who had seen her counting coins attended. The landlord came too. So did the elderly woman from the market, now healthier and smiling. As laughter filled the air, Hamza leaned toward Amina and whispered, "See, tomorrow came." She smiled, glancing at Sami and Noor playing nearby. "Yes," she said, "but only because someone told us to eat today." Years later, when their home had grown louder with more children and fuller with blessings, Amina made it a quiet rule. No one who stood outside her door hungry would leave empty-handed. Sometimes it was a loaf of bread. Sometimes it was a bag of rice. Sometimes it was simply a warm meal and a listening ear. And every time she handed food to someone in need, she would lean close and whisper the same words that had once saved her from despair. "Eat today." Because she had learned that kindness does not wait for tomorrow. It shows up in the rain, in the quiet moments when pride and hunger collide, and it chooses to act. And in doing so, it turns strangers into lifelines, and tomorrows into promises kept.